Charles tells the story. It's kind of cute. He went to the war and he had this soldier buddy. They were both from Kansas City. The war was over. They came back. And as they were putting buildings up on Unity Village, they built an inn, and the inn is really called the restaurant, the inn. And then they built an administration building, and then they built an educational building, and buildings were starting to sprawl out on this land. In the meantime, they had a little fruit stand across the street on Colburn Road where they'd just sell some of the produce to the locals. So Charles R. went to lunch one day with his former soldier buddy, and they're sitting there, and the soldier says, "Is that little tiny fruit stand producing all the revenue for all those buildings?" And he said, "No." The Fillmores did everything on a love offering basis. They never charged for anything. It was all love offerings coming in from people who had been healed by their work. And Myrtle continued to write letters to people in addition to the publishing that they did. Let me see if there's anything else here I've missed about. No. So this morning, that's kind of a preview. Today I want to share how to pray for healing and restoration. I want to share 4 ideas that the Fillmores really anchored in prayer for healing, physical healing. And I love Scripture, so I've kind of tied a Bible verse to each one as we begin. The first one is from Psalm 139. We can do the next slide. Psalm 139, verse 14. "I praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knows right well." And I love the light coming through the trees. I praise thee. The Fillmores believed that they were spiritual beings, wonderfully made, and that they anchored that in the soul of their being. Myrtle healed from, we'll hear her story later in the month, but if you're familiar with it, you know she had tuberculosis and malaria and a whole host of illnesses, and she'd been given 3 months to live. And she went to a lecture by Dr. E.B. Weeks, who said, "You're a child of God, therefore you don't inherit sickness." And she'd grown up with this idea that all the family had tuberculosis. I'll have tuberculosis, therefore. And she took hold of that as that, you know, those moments when somebody says something and you capture it, and it's they call an aha moment. I'm a child of God, therefore I don't inherit sickness. In other words, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and marvelous are their works, and my soul knows it. And she took that to heart, and we'll hear her story later this month, but she healed her body of all the ills, and rather than living 3 months, she lived 46 years beyond her diagnosis of 3 months to live. And she said this. She said, in her healing process, she taught, "Life has to be guided by intelligence and the making in all forms. Life or health is simply a form of energy, and it has to be guided and directed in a person's body by his or her intelligence." Right? Life is a form of energy, and it has to be directed in our body by our intelligence. Then she asked the question, how do you communicate intelligence? She said, by thinking and talking, of course. Then it flashed upon me that I might talk to the life in every part of my body and have it do just what I wanted. And I began to teach my body, and I got marvelous results. And we'll hear this when we learn about Myrtle. You know, she spoke words of life. My liver isn't torpid. My eyes are clear eyes, bright eyes. They see with the light of spirit. My heart beats with the love of spirit. She spoke words of life for 2 years to her body and was healed. When you think about healing your body, do you recognize that you are more than flesh and blood, that your body is not only physical but spiritual, that you are a human being you are a spiritual being having a human experience, but that you are a spiritual being primarily, essentially governed by spiritual law, living in a spiritual universe, governed by spiritual law. And do you think of yourself as vital and strong? And do you think from the perfection of spirit that you are? Because thinking that way can have a tremendous effect on the neural, we're learning now the neural networks that you're building up in your brain and how it's expressing in your body. One of my favorite authors, Dr. Caroline Leaf, her book, Switch on Your Brain, which is not an easy read, but I love it. She said it was only a few decades ago that scientists considered the brain to be a fixed and hardwired machine. This view saw that a damaged brain, once you had brain injury or, trauma to the brain, that it was incurable. And the focus was on compensation, not restoration of your functions. That, oh, well, you'll just have to make do for the rest of your life. But she says, but now we understand that we can change the physical nature of our brain through our thinking and our choosing. And in her book, she gives several demonstrations of a young 14-year-old girl who was in a car accident, had brain damage. They said she'd never recover. Then when she did start to recover some, they said, well, she'll never go beyond 4th grade level. And she had a goal to graduate with her high school class, and she kept working with the brain, building the networks, and she graduated with her high school class, functioning at a senior in high school level. Dr. Leaf says, as we consciously direct our thinking, we can wire out toxic patterns of thinking and replace them with healthy thoughts. Then new thought networks grow, and we increase not only our intelligence, but bring healing to our minds and our physical bodies. Now think of that. Myrtle said, life has to be guided by intelligence in the making of all forms. Life is simply a form of energy and has to be guided and directed in a person's body by his or her intelligence. And Dr. Leaf says we can wire out toxic patterns 180 years later. We can wire out toxic patterns of thinking and replace them with healing thoughts. That's Myrtle's picture, or her quote. And I love that picture, that we are swimming in the essence of the divine. And it's not about naming it and claiming it. It's not even about affirming it and forcing ourselves to practice and apply the spiritual law and do all the hard labor. It's just opening where my consciousness is now here, and I want to open myself and grow my consciousness of health and life to here, where my consciousness is here about my prosperity, and I just want to release any barriers and open myself so that my consciousness expands into the universe of that picture, into all of the divine substance that we're swimming in. There's no barrier between your outer physical flesh and the universe. You can just dissolve it all away and become one with the intelligence of the Spirit of God, and just sit in that silence like the Fillmores did. You don't have to ask for anything. You don't have to affirm anything. You allow. Esther Hicks, in her teaching, the Abraham teachings, has her book, The Art of Allowing. It's just, you don't ask for anything, just allow and let God do all the heavy lifting. Let God do all the laboring, and just feel yourself in that. If a healing challenge threatens you, you don't want to focus on all that you cannot do. Instead, you want to choose to direct your thoughts to your innate spiritual perfection. You are a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. And so we're blending the human mind and divine mind. And you strengthen yourself by prayerfully connecting with divine mind and receiving that flow of energy, just like the picture shows, just opening your heart and just receiving and allowing. Don't even name what you're receiving and allowing. Just open to more of it in your growing your consciousness. Put your attention on what you want to see for your life and minimize what is superficial or temporary. Expand your belief in consciousness into the divine ideas of life and health. I am the perfection of spirit. I am divine life. I am vibrant health. That's affirming it, but it's stretching the boundaries of all that you know and believe. I was thinking about this the other day, or maybe it was this morning. I was walking around in my house, and Charles Fillmore has a quote. I don't have it here with me, but when he talks about prosperity, he talks about children that are born and bred to riches, trust fund babies, and he says most of that wealth continues because there's never any thought that enters their consciousness of lack or insufficiency. Everything they've ever wanted in life is provided for them. So they live at this level of abundance. They have no awareness of this level of abundance. And I was thinking about that because wherever you grew up, remember your parents or your grandparents went through the Great Depression, and they never, oh my God, we heard that for years. We've had a lot of recessions worse than that. But you grew up at a certain level a certain lifestyle, a certain culture of wealth. And most children exceed what their parents did, right? They're saying now today's children aren't going to do as well as their parents. But historically, the children do better than the parents. But how much better? Maybe one level better, 2 levels better. Why not Bill Gates level better, or Warren Buffett better level, or Steve Jobs better level? Because we're cultured into this level is what we know. This level is what's comfortable for us. And I'm thinking, so what would happen if we decide that this is our level and we start to feel and move and think and be at this level rather than what we grew up with, or one station above what we grew up with? There's no limit. There's no limit. But part of that conditioning in our culture, in our lifestyle, in our growing up, has us conditioned to a certain amount of health and life, and a belief about health and life, conditioned to a certain level of prosperity, conditioned to a certain amount of loving relationships. And how, we can break out of that. We're not even tied into it. We just have put boundaries around what we think is possible for our lives. And then why not just open that up and see what happens. I'm off topic here. Affirm. Okay, there's an affirmation here. Here it is. Let's say it together. I allow more and more of infinite life to flow into my consciousness, releasing a mighty healing current that restores me. It does the work. Spirit does the work. You just allow more and more and more and more of what you can receive, who you can be, how much more can you live from the perfection of Spirit that's in you. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knows well. It's one of the things that the Fillmore's anchored in. Number 2, they said, look to Spirit and be radiant. We want to train ourselves to look beyond appearances, because behind the temporary condition that we're seeing, we want to know that we're spiritually perfect, that we always have been, and that we always will be. In the great ongoing, you're perfect. You're never going to be less than that perfection. So you want to refuse to fall in line with the crowd that thinks about age and weakness and deterioration. We don't want to say things like, I'm getting older. I can't do what I used to do. I forget things all the time. I guess I'll just have to learn to live with it. We're empowering that toxic thought in our bodies and in our lives. And again, Dr. Leaf says, the debate in science is between the mind being what the brain does and the brain doing the bidding of the mind. We always talk about the Christ mind as distinguished from brain. Your brain is an organ in your body, but your mind supersedes your body. It lives everywhere in the universe. It's unlimited. And so science has argued is the debate in science is between the mind being what the brain does versus the brain doing the bidding of the mind. The correct view, your mind is designed to control your body. Divine mind supersedes everything because it's your consciousness of Spirit, and it controls everything in your life. The brain is a part of your body that functions. Divine mind, ideas drop in, your brain captures them, creates thoughts, and builds the network that releases into your body. Last week I shared about Wallace Wattles and what he said about the hardest work that we'll do, and it's so tremendous it bears repeating. So let me just read the one paragraph out here. Oh, I guess I better do this. My eyes are clear eyes, bright eyes. They see with the light of Spirit. To think what you want to think is to think truth, regardless of appearances. This is not easy to do when there's x-rays and diagnosis and symptoms and pain and suffering. Every man has the natural and inherent power to think what he wants to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearances is easy. To think truth, regardless of appearances, is laborious. and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work man is called upon to perform. There is no labor from which most people shrink as they do from the sustained and consecutive thought, it is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. Hardest work will do to envision and anchor that my soul knows well. I am perfect spiritual life essence. I am a child of God. Therefore, I do not inherit sickness. Whatever's showing up in me is a passing temporary condition that can be rooted out by the neural networks that I build in my brain that releases into my body. Let me see. Are you with me? Let's see. So as you give thanks that you are the radiant life of God, your consciousness is expanding. I want to say it's easy work to do that, to just be in the silence. The Fillmores so believed in just sitting in the silence and allowing. As your consciousness expands, the circumstances you may have thought impossible will flow smoothly and to their right conclusion. Outcomes you could not possibly have predicted will turn into blessings for you. You've heard me tell the story about my foster brother who came to live with our family when he was 3. Then his dad took him away for a year, which made us sick. And then he brought him back when he was 4, dropped him off, and essentially never showed up again. So Lewis was with us from the time he was 3 until he was 10. And then my mom had a heart attack, and she just couldn't. She was 80. She just couldn't care for the energies of a 10-year-old any longer, and he was pretty robust. So it looked like we were going to have to place him somewhere else. And I mean, it was to say it was emotional was something. But I remember going into prayer over this 4th of July, I think it was right before the 4th of July weekend. And I would just say, Lewis, I behold the Christ in you. Here the life of God I see. I see a great peace too. I can see you whole and well and happy and free. And then like I shared last week, I'd walk around the house and I'd be folding my laundry and I'd stop. Just like Mr. Fillmore did in the middle of the house. Lewis, I behold the Christ in you. Here the life of God I see. I see a great peace too. I can see you whole and well and happy and free. Now, there's no asking in that. There's claiming happiness and joy for him. There's no directing. It's just opening and allowing spirit to flow smoothly to a right conclusion to create an outcome that I could not possibly have predicted that will turn for blessings. And over that weekend, he came up to Penryn with his little best buddy whose family lived in Penryn. And there was a family barbecue picnic, and Roger and Sue were there. And they met Lewis, and she's a bookkeeper, he's a pharmacist, and they wanted a child, but they wanted an older child. Lewis was 10 at the time. They didn't want a baby, and they, blah, blah, blah. So they took him for a week as a trial period, and he never came home again. And we were friends with him. We got him on summer vacations. We went to his high school graduation. He's my brother today, still. And so it worked out without any, I didn't call foster agencies. I didn't read it. I didn't do any of that. I just walked around and allowed myself to say, this is bigger than I can do, God. And I behold the Christ in Lewis, and I allow spirit to work in his life. And I did it over a 3-day period. It was about 3 days. And then it was the 4th of July, which symbolizes freedom, that we were able to move him to his new experience. And Roger and Sue ended up adopting him when he was 18. They adopted him. His dad died, and it freed him up to be able to adopt him. It worked out great. Number 3, commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. You've heard me tell the experience of when you have a bruise, flu, paper cut, bug bite, you're confident you'll get well, aren't you? You don't spend any time thinking, oh my God, is this going to get worse? Oh my God, look at the swelling is more today than it was yesterday. I don't think this ointment's working. I better go to the pharmacist and try. You don't do any of that. You might take some flu medicine, some aspirin. You might put some ointment on the bug bite. You might put a Band-Aid on the finger, that pesky finger pain when you have a paper cut. But you are certain, right? You'll get well, right? You're not going to die from a paper cut. You're not going to die from a bug. Well, certain bug bites. You get a bruise and you watch it. It's purple, and then it's blue, and then it's green, and then it's yellow, and then it's light red, and then it goes away. You wait and watch while the infinite intelligence of the vibrancy of life in you heals itself. There is an infinite intelligence, Myrtle said, in your body that you can direct, right? Didn't she say that? Life has to be guided by intelligence in the making of all forms. Life is simply a form of energy, and it has to be guided and directed in our bodies by our intelligence, by speaking and talking. But there comes a time when paper cuts and bruises and stuff, you're so indoctrinated that this is just no big deal, that it just heals itself, right? You don't spend any time trying to heal that. You wait and you watch. We easily believe we can heal from bug bites and paper cuts, but we seem to think we don't have sufficient faith to heal the bigger illnesses, the ones that seem more complicated, the ones that have been around for a longer time. In fact, the common response to the bigger illnesses is fear, not faith. But you've got the system in you. Just like you lived at this level of prosperity in your culturing, in your conditioning and culture, you live at this level of health and life with bug bites and flu and paper cuts. Why not take it up a notch? It's the same healing energy. It's the same life energy in you. We have bigger things like chronic pain, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, liver problems, we can feel afraid. That's the human self of us. But the life force in us operates the same way, no matter what. No matter what. It's flowing in us and through us all the time. I'm using old examples today, but if I put the rubber band around my finger tightly and I leave it there, what happens? The finger turns red, and then it starts to swell. And if I leave it longer, it might turn purple or blue, and then it might swell, and it's starting to get dangerous. If I leave it a long time, the finger's going to deteriorate. It might even get black and get really serious. But the minute I release that rubber band, what happens? The life force flows in and immediately starts to restore that finger to its original pattern of wholeness. How is that different when you have a cancer or a diabetes or an illness or a headache or a depression or whatever? If you just open to allow that life force that heals the bug bite and the paper cut to flow in you fully unrestricted. It's the same life force. And this is what the Fillmores were teaching. I'm way back here now. We got all off here's the rubber band. Release the band. Okay, we know that. Today the Fillmores remind us that the life force flowing in our body that heals the paper cut is the same life force that heals cancer. It's just let the boundaries down and let the flow come in. You don't need more of it. You don't need more faith in it. You need to develop and expand your consciousness of the reality and the truth of the healing power of life. The same belief and assurance that you have about healing a bug bite. You don't think about it. You don't give it any attention. You don't worry about it. You don't fret. You don't give it any power or place in your consciousness. Can you train your belief to rise to that level about some issue in your life? I'm thinking of the story of the centurion servant who sent his soldiers to Jesus, said, come down and heal my servant. And they said, this guy's great, and he built the synagogue, and he's a wonderful guy. They're pleading with Jesus to come. Jesus says, okay, I'll come. And they're walking to wherever the servant is supposed to be, and some other soldiers come and say, oh, no. The centurion said, he's not worthy to have you come under his roof. Just simply speak the word, and the servant will be healed. He said, because I'm a man under authority, the centurion, the general of the army. I'm a man under authority, and I say to one of my soldiers, do this, and he does it. And I say, go there, and he goes there, and do this and do that. So just speak the word, Jesus, and my servant will be healed. And Jesus goes, wow, never have I seen anybody really get it like that there is a power within us to command the aspects of our life. And so at that time, some other people came down and they said, the servant is healed. And Jesus said, it's just so amazing. It's so amazing that we can comprehend. The centurion represents our will, and our will can direct the thoughts in our body through the Christ Spirit and create healing. Number 4, agree with God and be at peace. In this way, good will come to you. One of the aspects in healing, and the reason that the Fillmore sat in the silence, was clearing your mind will be like good medicine, healing your wounds and easing your pains. You want to get rid of antagonistic thought in your mind, that rumination. He said, she said, they did that, they did what? Can you believe? Let all of that go. Turning our challenges over to God provides relief, and relief again lowers the boundaries and opens the way for non-resistance so spirit can flow freely. Regular prayer will create a web of thought, a neural network that builds a realization of life, health, love, peace, and keeps our vibration high and strong. Wishy-washy thoughts, doubtful thoughts, occasional thoughts, they're not strong enough. Lewis, I behold the Christ in you here, the life of God I see a great peace too. I can see you whole and well and happy and free. Folding laundry, doing dishes, unloading the dishwasher. Lewis, I behold the Christ in you here, the life of God I see a great peace too. I can see you whole and well and happy and free. This is 40 years later. I still remember what I spoke over him and how it worked out. It's just a question of directing it. Dr. Leaf says you are able to stand outside yourself, observe your own thinking, consult with God, and change your negative toxic thoughts and grow healthy positive ones. When you do this, your brain responds with a positive neurochemical rush that improves your intellect, health, and peace. So in closing, I want to close up with the Fillmores taught to allow spirit to expand you, to expand your consciousness of life and health so fully that it's not about getting and manifesting and affirming and claiming. It's already all there in you. It's all around you. It's in us. It's all around us. It's about allowing, accepting, and enlarging. So let's affirm this last comment together, where I like this picture because it's a swish of energy that's flowing in and through us, unrestricted, not blocked by anything. Let's affirm it together. Every destructive thought of disease is now wiped out of my mind. The soothing, equalizing, vitalizing love and power of spirit harmonizes my entire consciousness and restores me to wholeness. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? God bless you. Let's take that into prayer as we have our time of meditation. So I want you to think about something in your life this morning. Take a deep breath in, and something you want to heal. Something, not that you want to heal because you're already perfect. It's something in you that you want to live its perfection more fully. Is that a health place in your, is that a physical place in your body? Is it a place in your love relationship, in your family relations? Is it a place in your finances? And let's make some mental movies for a moment and take a deep breath in and let it out. Let yourself be fully present to the presence. And since there is no space and time in God, let's roll backwards to the living room of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. 1880 something, 85, 86, 87. And see yourself sitting there with any questioning on your mind, but committed to coming together in a collective consciousness of prayer and right thinking. And the Fillmores spoke some words, like we affirmed, every destructive thought of disease is now wiped out of my mind. Any irregularity in my life, any condition seeking greater wholeness. And I allow the soothing, equalizing, vitalizing love and power of spirit to harmonize me, to harmonize my entire consciousness, and to expand me, to lift me up beyond what I've believed so far, to lift me above the level of belief and assurance to more than I've ever had before. More faith, as our word for today said. I believe in the absolute goodness of God. Our daily word said, I believe in myself as a spiritual being endowed with the gift of faith to direct however I choose. And so joining with that consciousness of Myrtle Fillmore and her faith, joining with Charles Fillmore and his consciousness of belief, take yourself up to a higher level of faith and belief. All things are possible. Stretch yourself, stretch your mind as if you're in a yoga class doing a gentle stretch. The assurance that you have that you'll heal from the bug bite or the paper cut. Let that same assurance and faith be in you now about any situation in your life. Let your imagination make a mental movie. And for a few moments in the silence, paint pictures of your best life. Total and complete healing. Resolution of situations, a situation you thought impossible. See it happening for your life. I believe in the absolute goodness of God. Let's affirm it. I believe in the absolute goodness of God. I anchor in the absolute goodness of God. Together. I anchor in the absolute goodness of God. And in your imagination, see all things in your life conforming to the perfection of spirit. You are a spiritual being, living in a spiritual universe, filled with divine mind, divine substance, all health, all life, all love, all peace. Let any perceived boundaries drop to the floor so that you're fully receptive to the power of spirit. Charles Fillmore said, I am now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. Dissolve yourself into that oneness. We take a deep breath in and know that we've now given that over to God. Turn our attention to our loved ones, to our government, to our nation, to the world. And for all of those conditions, all of those emerging points of light, we speak the word, we believe in the absolute goodness of God. Together, we believe in the absolute goodness of God. And as we allow it in and through ourselves and our spiritual community, as we pray for those we love, pray for the names that are in our prayer box, all who have asked for prayer from this ministry. When you watch the evening news, when you read the paper, whatever it is, believe in the emerging love and power of God. You can't judge by appearances. We judge from the perfection of spirit. And that perfection is love and peace and harmony for all. And for this time of remembering, this time of claiming and anchoring ourselves in that word, we give thanks. We give thanks to Charles and Myrtle Fillmore for their teachings. We go forth blessed, and together we all say, Amen.